But let's come to this now. President Cyril Ramaphosa is currently on a two-day state visit to Britain. The visit seeks to reset relations between the two nations post the COVID-19 pandemic. And now South Africa felt bruised by the UK's red listing for a second time in November 2021. This in response to the Omicron variant. Remember that time? But President Ramaphosa now aims to strengthen economic ties and investments in the country. And the UK is the largest contributor to over $8 million pledged by Western nations to assist South Africa in transition to clean energy. So to unpack this, I'm now joined by Senior Research Fellow to Africa-Asia Dialogues, Thembisa Fakude. Thembisa, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Let's start with this. Why this particular visit is not only significant to South Africa, but to Cyril Ramaphosa personally?
Yeah, I think it's some sort of vote of confidence on Cyril Ramaphosa that he'll be the first head of state to be invited and hosted by King Charles. So it's good news for Cyril Ramaphosa personally, but also good news for South Africa. I mean, Britain remains one of the it's a G7 country, is one of the most important country in the world, and to have the king, who the entire world was watching when he was inaugurated or installed in his new position, to invite to one of our own is quite a story, and it's something I think that is much appreciated by the president. So that's the first point. And I think the other point you've just mentioned is that, you know, South Africa is important, particularly now that the UK is looking at new countries to invest since exiting Brexit, and South Africa is prioritized as one of those top countries where British businessmen and investment is destined.
Yeah, but with that being said, though, and I'm sure you heard me say this, just reminding South Africans about that red listing, which had, some dire, economic effects. Tourism was affected by this. There was a lot of conversation and debate as to why the UK did it or took that decision and how long South Africa will stay red listed. So how important is this visit as well to address some of those issues?
I think it's going to address those issues. As you remember, all of us, not only the government of South Africa, but we as the ordinary South Africans were quite disappointed when we were red listed for the second time after that Omicron, and the South Africans were quite upset, and most of them were calling that we should reciprocate and also begin to red list the British and the UK citizens coming to South Africa. So I think this meeting, even though I think one will expect that President Cyril Ramaphosa will let the sleeping dogs lie, but I'm sure it will be erased on the side. But there are a lot of other discussions of agency, particularly on trade and economics. I think that's what they're going to be concentrating on these discussions for the next 2 days.
Yeah, and Tim, I understand that's why that visit or that meeting with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is equally important, right, to continue strengthening those economic ties and, vouching for those investments in South Africa. Understandably, as we currently are facing, tough economic times and, struggling to create more jobs.
Oh, yes, sure. And the president is committed to, the unemployment situation in South Africa is extremely, extremely dire. And we have to do something, all of us, not only the president, but in trying to make sure that we elevate the situation, because as it stands, this threatens to weaken not only our economy, but the security of this country. And I think the president is going there with in mind to say, South Africa needs jobs, South Africa needs investment, and I think that's going to be his priority. Other than of course, the just energy transition discussions that he's also likely to have with King Charles.
Yeah, I also have to make mention of this. I had incorrectly referred to the amount pledged by Western nations as $8 million. Actually, $8.5 billion. I have to make that correction. It's equally important because the UK is quite a big contributor to this pledge, right? So we just got out of COP27, and there's this just, energy transition. How significant are these conversations, especially as South Africa plans to transition from coal to clean energy?
These are very significant, and the amount of money that's been pledged is quite huge. But there are concerns, of course, from ordinary South Africans and some in the know that the process shouldn't be abrupt. The talk or the fear from many people is that the coal mines that are currently supplying, particularly Eskom, are just going to be shut abrupt. And that could create a problem, particularly in small towns in South Africa, towns such as Middelburg and Witbank. But we were kind of reassured that the president is aware of that and is going to take measures to convince the Western countries that it's important for South Africa to go through a just transition without further creating unemployment in this country. So whereas there are rumors that the coal mines are going to be abruptly shut, I think the president will try and impress on the UK that it's important that this is phased out in a way that it doesn't disturb the economy nor continue to impact on the unemployment in this country.